Hey, Maurice, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the show.
Of course, it's my pleasure. It's good to see you again.
I've been so excited and nervous to interview you. Like in my head, you're so high up. I can't even believe you're joining me on my podcast. So I just want to say thank you and let you know that I'm in awe of you.
That is wonderful.
Can you give everybody a little bit of an introduction about you? I know you do a lot of things, but just a small overview of kind of some of the things you're doing if they don't know who you are, which I'm sure they know who you are.
Well, what am I doing, man? So I am here. The end story is I'm 48. I'm based between DC, Washington, DC and Lebanon, coastal Lebanon. I run Quattro Capital, which is a private equity firm that we have about 250 million of assets under management at the moment. I was a federal agent for 22 years. I was a street cop for 15 years. I was an executive at a consulting firm for 25 years. Did everything from a business perspective. I've done everything from owning restaurants and clubs to failing at coffee shops to now I run online coaching business and my own podcast. So I'm just kind of multi-tier, but and what I want people to get from is, oh, he tries to do everything. No, I just lean into life a lot, and I like living that way, and my life book is very full.
It is very full. I think anybody who knows you live a very full life. And I think that's one of the reasons why you attract so many people to you. And one of the things I think that makes you stand out is how much you travel. And obviously I know that I've been on your podcast talking a lot about travel, and you've been to, is it 98 countries?
98 countries. I should say 400 times now. I always say 350, but I don't know anymore, but it's been 98 countries for sure.
Okay, here's my question for you. What is the question you wish people would ask you about travel? Because I'm sure the first question people ask you is what was your favorite country, or where are you going to next? But what's the question that people don't ask you that you want to answer?
I wish they would ask me why.
Okay. Yes. So tell me why.
My answer to that is because travel is constant learning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be stagnant. So someone has asked me, do you want to see all 196 countries? And I said, absolutely not. No, that's not what I was doing. It's that when I first traveled when I was 15, I think you know the story, but I went to France for 30 days. It changed my life as an inner city kid. And it just showed me that there's so much out there. But what really got under my skin was I don't want to be stagnant as an adult. I don't like the press repeat Groundhog Day 9 to 5 feeling at all.
Right.
So when you and I go to Africa, or when I go to Lebanon, or wherever I go nowadays, you get there and your brain has to think different. You're starting at the beginning. You have a beginner's mindset where, how do I take the bus? How do I get a eSIM for my phone? How does it work? How do I was in Lebanon last week, and I was going door to door to neighbors, dropping off bottles of wine to introduce myself because I want to be, a known quantity in the town. So I wish people would ask me that. It was never that I wanted to see the whole world. It was just because I like constant learning. I don't want to be stagnant. And when you're in a different place, you get to learn.
I love that. And I find that true. Every time you go to a new country, you learn so much. It puts you in a different position where you are kind of almost like a student trying to learn what they're doing, what their systems are. And for me, it also makes me really present because that's one of the things I love most about, I think, African countries is that it's so different that makes you even more present. But that's one of the things I love most about travel too.
Yeah. And it feels good. And I'm in DC right now, but I will be back on a plane on Wednesday to go back to Lebanon. I miss my coastal town. I'm so ready to get back there.
Can you share the connection with Lebanon? Because I feel like that's a country you don't hear as much. So what is your connection to Lebanon?
I was in, when I was a federal agent, I ran a field office for my agency in Western Turkey on the Aegean Sea. If you go a little bit south, you're on the Mediterranean. So I just kind of fell in love with the area. And then I was watching Anthony Bourdain one day, and he was in Lebanon, and that was the connection. And I went in November of 2019, right when they were having what's called Thawda, which is the revolution. Everybody was very open. So I just connected to people very quickly. I've taken a real appreciation for the country and the people. And to be honest, Valerie, I'm done. I feel like I'm done exploring. I feel like my best friend Melissa told me, Maurice, for the first time in 30 that I've known you in 33 years, you've stopped exploring. I think you found it. And I found something. It just feels good to me. I like the people. I like the Mideast. I get to Europe very quickly.
Right.
I just found my spot.
That's so cool. And that's amazing. And shout out to Anthony Bourdain. Like,
that's my guy. That's my guy. Yeah.
Okay, then obviously I'm a little bit more biased towards like Ethiopia and other African countries, which I know you've spent a lot of time in Africa. So can you share some of the countries you've been to? And, as the typical American, did your perception of those countries change once you actually went there?
I don't think I'm a typical American. I had a blank. No, for real. What I mean that in a positive way. I had a very blank slate when I showed up in Africa. So I went there in my military role, but for what I did in the military as a federal agent, I was plain clothes. So I was just living life normal, right? Working out of the embassy, but I lived in my own place and stuff like that. But I was based out of Djibouti. I lived in Djibouti, and then I lived in Manda Bay, Kenya. So I was in coastal Kenya.
Cool.
And then I traveled, personal and official wise, I traveled Ethiopia, Eritrea, Tanzania, I miss it, Uganda, Somaliland.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think 8 or 9 countries I've been to in Eastern Africa.
Amazing. And
it was the best.
What were some of your favorite, I guess, like even travel highlights that you would tell that you think most Americans would really love?
It's just people. Like the thing about Africa, it's almost like Europe in a way where you cross a border and there are some similarities, but there's the culture is radically different depending on what country you're in. So Djibouti is an old French colony, so it's heavy French influence, where Kenya is not, right? Or Somalia is not. There was no influence from a colonizer in those places, or the Brits were there. But it's just that it's radically different from border to border. Unlike, like if I'm in DC and I cross into Maryland, it's pretty much the same. It's not a different thing. But if you're in Djibouti and you go up to Ethiopia, it's going to be a whole different world.
It's totally different. I know that's something we talked about when I was on your podcast, and I still think that is I think that's the thing that most Americans don't know, is how every country is so different. And even within the countries is different. Like when I lived in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, the capital city, was one thing, but then going out of town to a different town in the country, totally different. Again, like the language would change, the religion, the history of the area, the food would change. It's interesting how diverse the countries are, and how I don't know why they are so similarly grouped, and like the diversity is not really known. But that's one of the biggest stereotypes I find, and I don't know why we don't know that yet, or why that's like common knowledge.
Yeah, same thing. And it's the same way in the Mideast too. It's the same way I want to get up to Northern Africa and spend time there. I'm really enamored by like Morocco, Tunisia, places like that. But in due time.
Those countries are on my list as well. That's definitely, amazing. Okay. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I have like a list of business questions that I just secretly want to know from you. Like, I just want your advice.
Okay.
Okay. So my first question is, as you mentioned, you've had like 4 careers, like in 2 decades time.
Yeah.
So that seems to go against the common knowledge, like to have one focus, only do that thing. You can't be successful when you're doing multiple things at a time. So what would you say that isn't true, and that you can be kind of multi-passionate and it works? Or how did you pull off so many different things well?
So my platform, my coaching platform and my podcast platform is called Try Life On. And I have all these Try Life On principles, but it's kind of starter thought processes to get people to think more critically about lifestyle. And one principle is try and, not or. Like when we were growing up, everyone's like, okay, go to school so you can become, what are you going to be when you grow up? And when people say that, then it denotes itself to being one thing, right? Specialization didn't come around until the 20s and the 30s during the Industrial Revolution. And people became specialized in one career. I didn't want to be one thing. I don't want to experience one feeling of life, I wanted multiple. So, yeah. So I was an executive. I was in the military too, as a lieutenant colonel and federal agent. When I was 33, I added being a police officer in the middle of the night. So I had full-time job during the day, full-time job at night. I was
Wow.
owning clubs and stuff. I don't like I don't like that feeling of I'm just stuck in this one area. And I tell
Yeah.
people, I had no problem with corporate, but if you think about it, if you are just socializing with the people at your company, then your brain and life and knowledge is limited to what's inside those four walls.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want that. I don't want to climb a mountain and say, "Hey, I'm the senior executive," and just sit there. I want to get off that mountain, go down and climb another one and learn something different. And I think that comes with the notion of being able to put down your past and learn something new. But yeah, I found ways to do, I'm not interested in or, I'm interested in and. So I've done a lot of things, and I'm this, and I'm that, and I'm that. You can if you want. It's a choice.
I love that. It is a choice. And you're right. I think I'm sure you were better at everything you did because you had exposure in different industries in different areas, because that probably made you stronger.
It's not that I had exposure in different areas. It's that I had I don't give an F muscle.
Love it.
I wasn't worried about people's definition of success. I wasn't worried about, I tell this famously on LinkedIn, I turned down being partner at my firm, I turned down the process for going into partner at my firm 4 times, because if I would have done it, then I would have, maybe for another 50, 60 grand, I would have had another 30 to 40 hours worth of responsibility. I didn't want that. That was somebody else's definition of success. I wanted to go be a street cop at night. So yeah, I was exposed to things, but even more so, the fact that I put on blinders and I just didn't care what people thought or their definition of success. I just wanted to live life my way.
I love that. And I like that you care so much about like your time freedom. I think that's something I see now that I moved back to the US, it's really feels missing. How do you carve out like time freedom when you are like an entrepreneur or running a business? How do you do both?
I wrote a newsletter on it, and I'm not trying to promote myself, but I'm actually going to on this one. If people go to trylifeon.com and go to newsletter 19, it's how to is time freedom possible? And it is. And I talk about the notion of creating and protecting time. So creating time, I know how to make a 14-month year, and I've been doing it my whole life. So I'm ahead of people because people can't catch up, right? Yeah. My prime time was 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. So it's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month, 960 hours a year. That's a week and a half of time you've created if you just focus on something. Okay. And if you add a Saturday and Sunday block, that's 2 months. It's 2 months.
Crazy. Hence the 14 months. Okay.
Okay. So how did you create a real estate portfolio? How did you do that? Because I was committed to myself. 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. And if I was on the road as a street cop, 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., then I was probably like legit between robbery and, let's say, accident calls. I was doing real estate in the car.
Love it.
Right. So that's the creating time. And then the protecting time, just real quickly, we have to understand we are all perfectionists. We are always trying to do every little nitpicky thing when in reality, Pareto's law is better. You do the 20% of things that give you 80% of the result, and you just leave it alone. And you protect the rest of your time to do your passions. We're such perfectionists at building somebody else's dream, going to 9 to 5 and building that person's dream. And what I was very good at was as soon as I did enough to get my 2 paychecks, I stopped and I would go focus on other stuff. So
I think that's the lesson I've learned. That's the lesson I've learned this year, especially as we've gotten busier. If I work too late, I'm just miserable and I really miss out on seeing my kids and stuff at them. And so I have put like a firm deadline, like I'm stopping work at this time and I'm not going to work on Saturdays and Sundays. And there's been pushback, but then at the end of the day, things still get done. And I've also realized I can hire to help me, or we just wait a day. Like it's actually not going to make a big difference.
we have to do it. And even today, after I finish this amazing conversation with you, like I have stuff to do, but I'm done. I told you my oldest son is in town. My youngest son is at school. So I'm actually pulling my young son from school an hour early so we can all go hang out. Like this work stuff will always be there. We have to like be intentional about grabbing the time and doing something with it.
Yeah. It's kind of never ending too. Like there's never like a stop point because there's always more. So
that's it. It'll never end.
I wish there was more people. Like I wish there was more people who could hear this message, because I think that we've heard the other side, like just work like crazy. And then you see that people don't take time to work out or to be with their family. And there is a point where you do have to put those boundaries up.
For sure.
Other question I have for you is your LinkedIn is amazing. So when I look at my LinkedIn, I'm like, I'm pretty decent. I really enjoy it. And then I look at yours and I'm like, you are on another level. If there's one takeaway from this podcast, I would tell everybody to find you on LinkedIn. We'll link to it.
Yeah.
You have like 60,000 followers, and your posts are so authentic and so helpful. In a world where everybody's being super spammy, you are just so generous with like the advice and the stories that you're sharing.
Yeah.
Tell me how are you doing this on LinkedIn? Like, how are you growing so fast? What has LinkedIn done for your business? How would you tell other people to use it better?
And LinkedIn started because my friend Jerome, who was the first podcast interview I ever did in 2019, I think in 2019, he challenged me. He said, look, man, if you're a man of service the way that you are, and nobody knows this story of you, all these careers and these businesses, but mainly lifestyle, like everything you've done, you're not sharing it. So you're not helping people. And that really got under my skin, because I do consider myself a servant person, police officer, military. Like I'm very much that guy. Yeah. So I started posting. Another Try Life One principle, what's in it for them? Every time I post, I don't care what comes from it. I legit think about, how is that going to help someone who's reading this today? I don't schedule my post. I don't do any of that. I just sit down in the morning and I think of what's on my mind for the day and how it's going to help people. Or if I have an inspiration about something, I might write it down and think about how to post on it later. But I think just like anything, over time, you just get better. It was weird in the beginning. I didn't really know what I was doing. And what I noticed was people wanted an excuse to go try life on. People wanted an excuse to be like, I don't want to get promoted at work. People wanted an excuse to, I don't want to be a CEO. I want to be a police officer. People were looking for an excuse to go be who they were going to be. And somehow I became that voice for people. And then people started to realize, man, he really doesn't care what no one thinks about it. So it just become this authentic thing. And I enjoy it because I know I'm helping people. And you know what fuels me? I'll get like random messages from someone in Slovenia. Hey, man, you changed my life because A, B, and C. And then how it's helping my business, obviously, from a coaching perspective, that's how I attract clients, is through LinkedIn. And I source them all. They come to me. I don't even seek them out anymore. They come. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you've become like, you've showed people that when you follow your own life's desire and try life on, as you'd say, you actually do become successful, but successful in every aspect. Like, I think the conventional thinking is that because you turned down wanting to become partner, that you wouldn't have turned out successful, but instead, here you are with like your own consulting, programming, investment, like you've become so successful by doing what people would say is not successful.
And I want to caveat and that's gracious of you. Thank you. But I want to caveat that I have become successful, let's say in some standard definitions, right? I have a private equity firm and I retired as lieutenant colonel, and I don't know, like I did 25 years in corporate, like cool. That's great. But I want to tell you what's even more successful. That I'm turning everything off. My mentors, I have mentors who are in their 60s. And what I have gotten from them is that they shut off their business minds too late. They never, they grinded so much. I'm like, why are you grinding at 65? Are you enjoying life and being out there and plugging into the planet? And I've told my business partners, I'm not interested in doing any more deals. I'm 48 years old. I have enough money to cover my basic needs. I have plenty of assets that will cover my family generationally. I want to live more. I want to meet more people. I want to go to my Lebanese coastal village, and I contacted the local fishermen association. I'm like, can I help you do a public-private partnership to restore the port? Like, I don't,
So cool.
we can do all this stuff forever and forget to live. And my definition of living is experiences and relationships. So if I have enough money per se, like my money will grow. I have assets, so they will grow in value over time, but I don't need them. And I don't need to go out and get more and more and more to be happy. What I need to be happy is to go live and have more experiences and meet people. And so I think I want people to hear that version of success. So like he did a lot of stuff and literally at age 48, he's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm putting it all down.
Yeah. It's a story you hear very often.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. So one other follow-up question is to get to this point, did you just see what others were doing wrong or that wasn't working for you? Or like what business advice do you think is missing? And let me preface that a little bit more. Yeah. I feel like I read all the business books in the beginning that were very similar, like have a dream, quit your job, go for it, be bold, don't be afraid of failure. So I did all of that. And then our company Cradle has taken off. It's been super amazing. But now I feel like there's almost a gap between what happens when you've done all the right stuff and you have this business that's like starting to flourish. But now there's like a new level of like business questions and advice and things I want to know. But I don't see a lot of books or a lot of information out there on that kind of next level. So where are you getting your information to grow? Or is it just things you've learned along the way and you come up with it yourself?
I read the same 5 books for 20 years.
What are those books?
5 books. 2 real estate books. So one was the real estate Millionaire by Gary Keller. The other was Multifamily Millions by David Lindahl, because I moved into apartment complexes. That's it from a real estate perspective. From an investing perspective, I read Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. And then from a lifestyle and purpose perspective, I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss and then Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was a Holocaust survivor.
Wow. Yeah.
My philosophy, Val, was if I reread these books and I execute what these books tell me forever, then it may not be that these books are the best, but I am the best at these books. So my success, quote unquote, from a business perspective is because I'm doing the same principled things. I'm not chasing the shiny ball and trying to do the next thing. I've just gotten very consistent at how I go after things, you know?
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I think differentiates my journey from that of others. Everything I have done has been purposeful towards life.
Okay.
Like the reason I chose real estate was because I knew that I could build a footprint of having 5,000 residents, 2,000 apartments, I have 100 investors, or hundreds of investors, 50 business processes. Like it's all virtual because I needed to facilitate my life.
Right.
I picked developing in the Mediterranean because I want to live in the Mediterranean. I picked it related to my life, right? I didn't just go chase the thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I always tell people like the best thing about hiring a VA from like Kenya is now you have a business right off to go to Kenya. But
it's purposeful. It's a beautiful thing. Like I would like to open a bed and breakfast maybe, but it would be in Mediterranean, so I can always be there.
Yeah, I love that.
The right way.
Yeah. Okay, and then to talk more about that. So in terms of like virtual. Like, again, like that very much supports what we're doing. Like I'm very remote work is like the future. So you've been able to build all of this without in-person employees or without like an actual office. So what has that been like and what have been the benefits for you? And were you doing this before COVID as well?
Oh yeah, because I've always been doing real estate. But remember, I was an executive at a company for 25 years. So it's like I did have responsibilities that were in person. But what I did, remember, like I didn't go for partner, but I also created a role and presented it to my boss to show her how it would be more revenue for her. And it was a totally virtual thing that I came up with so I could go live. Right. Now, in the real estate side, I told my business partner, I've always been doing real estate. I was very smart about when I was buying condos back in the 2010s. I would buy it. I self-managed 35 places. And finally, in 2012, I got smart. I was like, if I give up 10% of my revenue, I get 90% of my time back. I
Wow.
gave it up. So relative to the outsourcing thing, my property managers took over everything. Same thing for my
Cool.
apartment complex business. We have
Super
12, I
smart.
have 12 property managers across my apartment complexes and my single family homes. I have 12 property managers. I can manage everything from this cell phone. This is my life. This cell
Yeah.
phone, the computer that you and I are on, apps, business tools, no footprint, no nothing, because I need to facilitate my life. You know it. I want to get on a plane.
Right.
I'm ready. I want to go.
Yeah.
I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. It needs to be that way. So what I did was I designed the business to support my life. I didn't create a business that became my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was there ever a time where you feel like, okay, this isn't working for me. I designed something. It's not working. I am more tied down than I want to be. Or were you pretty intentional
Yeah.
that
When
never
I started
happened?
doing the restaurant stuff, yeah, I felt
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
I'm happy. And I did a coffee shop thing, which failed, but I felt it. It's like I coached someone and he owns a bunch of Subway restaurants and he did that to get out of the 9 to 5. And I said, but you've just created another 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So I'm helping him insert what I call a superstar. We got to find someone to run the business for him. I'm like, give up 20% of your ownership, brother. Give it to someone so
Mm-hmm.
you can take your wife and go be wherever you want to in the world and enjoy yourself and what have you. But yeah, I've had those moments when I created something and I'm like, oh, no, this makes me static. This is not how I want to live. So I punch out.
Yep. Yeah. I agree 100%. Like every time I've made a decision where I'm like, oh no, this is not working, the more I prioritize my happiness and well-being, the better the business actually does. Even if it's, yeah, even if I'm like, okay, I have to hire someone, I'm going to make a little bit less money, but then I always end up making more money actually, because I'm happy and I come up with better ideas and my energy really helps the team.
Yeah, you're happier.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap this up a little bit, can you tell people more about what you're doing, consulting, the programs, if people can invest with you? Tell me more about all of that.
Yeah, so I have 2 businesses now that I run. One is Quattro Capital. So we buy add value apartment complex. People don't realize this, but apartment complexes need to be renovated every 5 to 7 years or so. Otherwise, we'd still have linoleum from the 80s if they never got renovated, right?
Yeah.
So we will buy the apartment complex with money we raise from investors. Let's say we buy it at 21 million with investors, and then we'll improve it, get the rents up, commensurate to the value. I'm not going to gouge residents. I don't do that. Mm-hmm. But we'll get the rents up commensurate to the quality of life for the residents. And then we'll probably be able to sell that $21 million asset for like 30, 36, 37, 38 million. And everybody shares in the proceeds.
Yeah.
So we have people who come in.
What do you have to be to invest with you? Like, what is the minimum? Is there like a minimum dollar amount people have to invest?
Usually 100,000. Okay. And that's purposeful, because if you imagine we're raising, let's say $10 million on a small property, if people came in at 25,000, that's a lot of people to manage, a lot of accounts to manage. So minimum is usually $100,000 or so. So that's my apartment complex investing. And then Try Life On is just the platform you and I talked about, which is a coaching platform. But really, it's not even, I'm actually revamping it. Yes, I coach. I'm happy to coach, but that's not the thing. I want people to see me as an honest knowledge broker. I'm literally writing newsletters once every 2 weeks and obviously doing the podcast. And even like I'll talk about Try Life On principles on single podcast episodes just to get the information out there so people can go try life on themselves at any time. You know? But I coach people one-on-one. I help them build lifestyles they don't need a vacation from. I haven't taken a vacation in almost 10 years. I don't need to. Just kind of my life is organized in a way I live happily.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that. And then I know that you travel like crazy. So most people will consider that vacation, but you're working while you're there, but you're happy and it just fits your lifestyle.
It's my luck. Yes. So I jokingly say, but it's not a joke, I commute from the Mideast every other Monday on Monday morning to get to DC late Monday morning to take my son to school. Not kidding. I leave Jordan at 1:45 in the morning to do this. People are like, that's crazy. It's insane. I'm like, no, but it's normal for me. I made my extraordinary ordinary. So the travel for me, I really want people to pick this up. Please, please, please demystify the airport. The airport is a bus station and an airplane is just a bus with wings. There is nothing to it. We have this notion that if we're getting on a plane, it's this big thing. If I get on a plane and I fly direct from here to Athens, it's a 12-hour flight direct. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's a long flight, Maurice. Yeah, but you slept 10 hours last night in your bed. I'm just sleeping on the plane. I'm just going to my other neighborhood.
Wait, I have one quick question for you. When you're on a long plane ride, are you using that time like efficiently, or are you just like watching movies and sleeping, or like are you working?
Sometimes I'll work, but nowadays, no. I just want to sleep because jet lag is it'll get you. It'll get you. But I'm usually sleeping, or I'm watching 2 or 3 movies and just doing my thing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Maurice, I could talk to you forever, but I'm going to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Can you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, of course. TryLifeOn.com is my platform. My email address is maurice@trylifeon.com. I answer everything. I'm very active on LinkedIn, as you know, so that's just Maurice Philogene. I'm semi-active on I'm active on Instagram. I'm actually on a mental diet right now, so I've shut it off. I don't want to see it for a month or two. So Instagram. And then the apartment complex stuff is Quattro Capital. So the website is The Quattro Way, QUATTROWAY, thequattroway.com. And folks can reach out to me there too.
I love it. And follow, like, your LinkedIn is also my favorite. Like if that's like the one thing people do is start following you on LinkedIn, they'll see your newsletters and your website from there. Yeah. So cool. Thank you, Maurice. Talk to you soon.
My pleasure. It's good to see you.